My name is Pastor Kenny, and this is my grace story. From the very beginning, I knew I was different. I didn't grow up in a perfect family. We weren't rich, and we didn't have it all together. But one thing I had from a young age was a deep hunger for God. It wasn't something anyone forced on me. It came naturally, like breathing. While other kids played soccer or talked about their favorite superheroes, I was drawn to the Bible stories. I'd sit in the corner of the living room flipping through the pages of our old family Bible, fascinated by the lives of David, Moses, Paul, men who gave their all for God. In secondary school, while most of my classmates were still trying to figure life out, I already knew, deep down, God was calling me. It wasn't a loud voice from the sky. It was something inside me, something that burned like fire in my chest. I knew I wasn't called to just attend church. I was called to preach, to lead, to serve. And so, even as a young teenager, I started preaching during morning assemblies and helping out in my school fellowship. Eventually, I became the fellowship president. It was hard, but I loved it. Every step I took felt like a step into my purpose. By the time I got to the university, my fire for God hadn't gone out. It had only grown stronger. There, too, I became the president of our campus fellowship, serving for 2 full years. And though the pressure was high and the weight of leadership was heavy, I was grateful for the experience. I learned what it meant to trust God, to serve others, to love even when you're tired. Those years prepared me for something bigger, even though I didn't realize it at the time. After graduation, I went for my NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. I served in a new state, far from home. I didn't know anyone, but God went before me. Soon enough, I was made the fellowship president again in the Corpers Fellowship. I laughed when I was elected. I thought to myself, God, you don't ever take a break with me, do you? But deep down I was glad to serve, glad to carry His name on my shoulders. After my NYSC, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't need to think twice. I didn't sit down to weigh options or ask what the most logical choice was. I already knew the answer: ministry. God had placed a burning desire in my heart to preach His word and lead people to salvation. I wasn't chasing money. I wasn't looking for fame. I just wanted to fulfill the calling I had carried for years. So, I enrolled in ministry school. It was a 2-year program, and every day was a mix of stretching and refining. We studied scripture, learned about pastoring, and were trained to build not just churches, but lives. The training was hard, the routine strict, but I loved every bit of it. I knew I was being shaped for what lay ahead. But not everyone shared my excitement. My parents were not happy, especially my father. "You're a graduate, Kenny," he said one evening, slamming the newspaper on the table. "You finished university with a good degree, and now you want to waste it all becoming a pastor?" He didn't even hide his disappointment. "There's no money in ministry," my mom added. "How will you survive? What woman will marry a man who can't even feed himself?" They had a point, but not the full picture. They didn't see the fire in my bones. They didn't understand that this was more than a career. It was my destiny. I tried to explain it, but they just couldn't see it. It got to a point where I knew I had to make a painful decision. I had to leave home. I wasn't angry at them. I understood where they were coming from. They wanted the best for me, but I had to follow God, even if it meant walking alone. So I packed my small bag and left. I joined a local church where I served quietly in the ushering department. I didn't come in with a title. I didn't introduce myself as Pastor Kenny. I just came to serve, sweeping floors, arranging chairs, and welcoming people with a smile. One day, while I was cleaning the church hallway after a service, Pastor Timothy, the senior pastor, stopped me. "There's something about you," he said. He'd been watching me. He made me the leader of the prayer department and eventually one of his assistant pastors. It was an honor I didn't expect, but I accepted it humbly. I served faithfully, learning from him, praying with him, and sitting with him in meetings. He didn't treat me like a servant. He treated me like a son. I didn't know then how much of what he poured into me would one day become the foundation of my ministry. But even with all the growth, life was hard. I thought the path would be easy, that once I said yes to God, everything else would fall in place. I was wrong. I didn't have a job. I applied to several places, no calls, no interviews, nothing. It felt like doors were closing faster than I could knock. I started doing small jobs just to survive. I helped people move. I cleaned offices. I even sold secondhand clothes at one point. People in the church, yes, even church members, would mock me. "Pastor, without a job," they whispered. Always praying for people to get jobs, yet he can't get one himself. It hurt, but I kept praying. I kept believing. Some nights, I would sit in my small room, staring at the ceiling, crying quietly. "God, why is it so hard? Am I doing something wrong? Did I misunderstand your calling?" But deep inside, I knew I hadn't missed it. I was just in a season of waiting. And though it broke me, I kept going. Because I knew God was not finished with me yet. It was during one of the hardest seasons of my life that I met her. Her name was Martha. She was in the children's department at church, full of life, always smiling. The kind of smile that could soften the hardest day. The first time I saw her, I just knew. I felt something move inside me. I felt at peace. But then I remembered. I was a broke pastor. No job. No house of my own. No savings. Just a calling and a heart full of faith. What woman would want a man like that? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did what I knew best. I prayed, "Lord, if she's the one you've chosen for me, please show me. I don't want to take a step you didn't send me on. I can't afford to make a mistake here." Weeks passed. I fasted. I prayed again. And finally, I gathered the courage. One Sunday after service, I walked up to her. My heart was pounding. I wasn't romantic, not in the slightest. My voice was shaking. My hands were sweaty. "Sister Martha," I said, "I believe God is leading me to you. I'd love for you to be my wife. I believe you're the one to walk with me on this journey He's called me into." There was a moment of silence. Then she laughed. Not the sweet, flattered kind of laugh, the kind that cuts deep. She walked away, still laughing. I stood there like a fool, embarrassed, ashamed, confused. I went home and lay flat on the floor, heart shattered. God, was that you? Or was it just me? I didn't eat that night. I didn't sleep much either. The silence of the room was louder than any sermon. The weight of rejection pressed hard on me. But I kept praying. Weeks passed. She avoided me every time we crossed paths in church. I tried to keep my head high, to focus on my service to God, but my heart still ached. Then one quiet evening, I was under a tree in the church compound, counseling some young people. When I finished, I turned around and saw her standing there. She walked slowly toward me and said softly, "Brother Kenny, I will marry you." I didn't know whether to cry or shout for joy. My heart felt like it would burst. I didn't ask why she changed her mind. I didn't care. All I knew was God had done it. But the journey after that wasn't easy either. We had a beautiful wedding, one we could barely afford. People laughed, asking where we got the money. The truth? We didn't have it. But God provided through kind friends, family, church members, and last-minute miracles. And so, I entered marriage with joy and fear, because I still had no steady job, no house of our own, no real income, just a wife with a strong heart and a bigger faith than I had. Martha was my blessing. She supported me. She prayed with me. She never disrespected me or made me feel small. But then came another storm. 2 years into our marriage, we were still childless. And in our culture, people don't hide their opinions. "Is your wife okay? What are you waiting for? Maybe your hands aren't clean, Pastor." Even his prayers can't give him a child. Mockery. Sneers. Whispers. It hurt more than I could say. There were nights I would hear my wife crying softly into her pillow. And I, the man of God, had no words. No prophecy. No miracle. Just silence. We kept going for tests. Nothing was medically wrong, but nothing was happening either. 3 years. 4 years. Still nothing. I began to feel like a failure. As a man. As a pastor. As a husband. I prayed. Oh, how I prayed. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the church building and lay flat on the floor, face to the ground. I groaned. I wept. I poured out everything. "God, where are you? I've served you. I left everything to follow you. I've cried. I've fasted. I've waited. Why do you seem so far from me?" I remember screaming into the silence, the sound echoing through the empty hall. "Why have you forgotten me?" So I stayed there, groaning, crying, until the next day. I had no answers, but I had peace. 5 years after our wedding, the storm hit. My mentor, the man who believed in me when others didn't, Pastor Timothy, died suddenly. I was crushed. It was like losing a father. He had poured so much into me, trusted me, carried me along, built me in ministry. His death didn't just shake me, it shook the entire church. For weeks, the congregation was heavy with mourning. Everyone kept asking, "What next?" And then came the surprise. He had left a will, naming me as his successor. Me? I was the least likely in most people's eyes. There were older pastors, more experienced leaders, wealthier men, respected voices in the church. I was the broke assistant pastor. People murmured. Some leaders laughed. Others became angry. How can he be the one? Is this a joke? Didn't Pastor Timothy have sons in the Lord closer to him? But I didn't appoint myself. I didn't want the position. I just wanted to obey God. The next few weeks were chaos. One by one, the senior leaders left the church. They started their own congregation on the same street and began pulling members from our church. They said things like, "That boy used charm to get the church. How can someone with no job lead us? There's no glory here anymore." Within 3 months, over 80% of the members were gone. I remember walking into church one Sunday and seeing only 10 people. 10. my wife, 2 elderly women, 7 young people, barely out of college, the big choir, gone, the ushers, gone, the instrumentalists, gone, the tithers, definitely gone. All I saw was empty chairs and the broken faces of those who chose to stay. That Sunday, I tried to preach, but my throat tightened. My voice cracked. I closed my Bible and said softly, "Let's just pray." We knelt together, all 10 of us, in that big empty hall. And I cried. I wept in front of them. No shame, no ego. I said, "God, this is your church, not mine. You said the gates of hell will not prevail, but the gates are fighting. I feel abandoned, mocked. But Lord, if all I have left is you, then I still have everything." One of the old women, Mama Agnes, laid her hand on me and whispered, "Don't give up, my son. You are a good shepherd. Keep feeding the sheep." But behind closed doors, I was drowning. There was no stable salary, no church income. The rent on the building was overdue. Light bills, maintenance, and cleaning, all on me and my wife. Martha, God bless her, took up extra shifts at work. She paid most of the bills. She would come home tired, her feet swollen, but still smile and say, "God is faithful." There were nights I stayed up, looking at her as she slept and whispering, "Lord, I don't deserve this woman." I sold my phone once to pay the electricity bill. Another time, I walked for 3 hours to visit a member because I couldn't afford transport. The same people I once prayed for crossed the street when they saw me. Some whispered, "That's the failed pastor." I began to question everything. Maybe my parents were right. Maybe ministry wasn't for me. And then one night, I had just finished from a church prayer night. As I locked the church door, I sat and stared at the pulpit. "Lord, are you still here?" I fell on my knees, face to the ground, and cried. I groaned, not words, just pain. It felt like my chest would rip open. I cried out, "God, you gave me this calling. You promised me. You said I would raise mighty men. But now all I have is dust and empty seats. Why are you silent? Why are you hiding? Why does it feel like I'm carrying this burden alone?" I opened my Bible, trembling, and my eyes fell on Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." And on Habakkuk 2 verse 3, "Though the vision tarries, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." That night, I didn't get answers, but I received peace. After that night of weeping on the church floor, I made a decision. I won't give up, but I need help. I told my wife, Martha, I need to talk to other pastors. I need wisdom, counsel. Maybe I'm missing something. She looked at me, her face soft and tired, and said, "Just be careful. Not everyone who stands on a pulpit stands with God." I didn't fully understand her words then, but I would soon. So I started reaching out. I visited pastors I once admired, men with large congregations, well-known names, men I thought had the oil, the fire, and the answers. I explained my situation, how the church had split, how members left, how my wife and I were struggling financially, how I felt stuck despite my faithfulness. Some of them listened kindly, others rushed me. But then came the advice. One well-known pastor leaned forward and whispered, "Son, Let me be real with you. You can't grow a church just by prayer and fasting anymore. I blinked. Sir? He nodded seriously. You need influence. You need manifestation. Members are moved by power, not preaching. Another one told me bluntly, Look, Pastor Kenny, if you want your church to grow, go and see this prophet. He will prepare something for you. You'll just put it under your altar. Within weeks, the place will be packed. My heart sank. Sir, you mean... He cut me off. Listen, God understands. It's not like you're denying him. It's just reinforcement. I left that meeting shaking. I felt sick. One man of God, a man I once watched on television, and even quoted in my sermons, put his hand on my shoulder and said, Kenny, you're too rigid. That's why you're suffering. Don't let integrity block your progress. That night, I sat in my room, head in my hands. Was this what ministry had become? A competition of crowds? A showcase of magic? A theater of deception? I said out loud, if this is what it takes to grow a church, I'd rather remain with my 10 members. That night, I opened my Bible again, and I found these words. Psalm 127, verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. And then again, Mark 8, verse 36. What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? But the struggle remained. People kept mocking me. I'd walk past old church members in the market and hear things like, That's the failed pastor. How far with the church now? Him and his wife still dey preach? Not only dem dey attend service? That day, I came home and found Martha cooking. I hugged her tightly and began to weep. She held me and whispered, I know it hurts, but God sees us. One day they'll see what he's building in the dark. We were also 5 years into our marriage, and still no child. The same mouths that mocked my ministry now mocked our barrenness. He can pray for healing, but his wife can't even get pregnant? Maybe he angered God. If truly God called him, he would have a child by now. The words stung like fire. I would go into the church when no one was there and kneel at the altar. Sometimes I prayed, sometimes I just groaned. Sometimes I said nothing. One evening, alone in that empty church again, I prayed this prayer. God, you called me, didn't you? Then you must finish what you started. Your word says in Isaiah 46 verse 10, My purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. So Lord, please, help me to hold on. Teach me to build what you gave me. Send your rain or help me survive the drought. And then I said, I still believe you. Even in the silence, I believe. Even if I never see the results, I will still preach. Even if I have just one person listening, I will still teach. Even if no one claps, I will still serve. That night, something happened inside me. Not a miracle, not a breakthrough, but a fresh resolve. The next morning, I began discipling the members, especially the youth that stayed. I taught them leadership, evangelism, faith. We cleaned the church ourselves. We set up a prayer chain. We fasted every Friday. No music team? We clapped and sang with our voices and hands. No money? We denoted to print tracts and go on outreaches. No media? The young ones began recording my messages with their phones and posting on social media. God didn't move overnight, but he began to move. I remember it like yesterday. The morning was quiet, the air still. The church was empty as usual, just me, my wife, and the same faithful few. But something in my spirit was different. There was no thunder, no vision, no angel, just a still small whisper. Be faithful with the little. So, I continued preaching like the church was full. I'd stand behind the pulpit, look out at the 7 or 8 people before me, and say, "Let's open our Bibles too." And I would teach with the fire of revival in my bones. Some Sundays, no offering would come in. Some weeks, we couldn't pay electricity bills, and we'd worship in heat, wiping sweat with our bare hands. The pain was still there. The barren womb, the financial lack, the mockery, the loneliness. But we were determined. One day, I walked into the house and found Martha on her knees in the bedroom crying softly. "What is the problem? Why am I barren? It's been 7 years. 7 years of barrenness. I've done everything. We've prayed, fasted, but it's 7 years now." I knelt beside her and held her hands. We didn't say much, but that night we prayed. Not with many words, just with tears and faith. God, we're not asking for a child just for joy. We want children who will serve you. Give us fruit that will abide. 2 months later, Martha came into the room, her hands trembling. She held out a white strip. "Pregnant?" I whispered. She nodded. We both broke down. Tears, laughter, praise. After 7 long years, 7 years of questions, pain, shame, God remembered us. And He didn't just give us one. He gave us twins. Double for our trouble. At the same time, something began to happen in the church. It started with a lady who had been with us through the hard times, one of the youths. She posted a short video clip of my Sunday message on her social media. Within a few days, it had thousands of views. Then someone reached out. "Pastor, do you have more of this? I want to listen." So we started posting more. One of the youths, David, suggested, "Let's live stream our Sunday services. It may not be perfect, but people need to hear the Word of God." We agreed. They used their phones. Soon, people from within the city, other cities, and even other countries began to tune in. Some sent messages like, "This word saved my life. I didn't know such powerful teaching could come from a small church. I want to visit this ministry." One Sunday morning, I walked into the church, and the room was fuller than usual. New faces everywhere. I was stunned. "Are you here for a program?" I asked a group of young people. One smiled and said, "No, sir. We've been watching your videos online. We wanted to come and worship with you in person." That day, I wept on the altar again, but this time with joy. Soon after, Martha received an email from her office. She opened it with trembling hands. "Promotion," she whispered. Not just a regular promotion, an executive-level promotion, the kind that comes with a car, better salary, and full medical care just in time for the babies. She ran into my arms, and we danced around the room like children. Then came the shock of all. One of the elders who had led the split in the church walked in one day with his wife. He sat quietly through the service. After the message, he walked up to the altar and said in front of everyone, "I judged you wrongly. I let pride get in the way. Please forgive me." Soon, more ex-members began to return. Some joined again. Some apologized. Others simply sat in the back, but their presence was enough. Those pastors who mocked me, some of them reached out privately, asking how we were growing. "Pastor Kenny, what's your secret?" I simply replied, "Faithfulness, integrity, God's grace and mercy. The youth we discipled, the ones who stayed, they became pillars in the church. One runs the media team now. Another is our missions coordinator. One started a campus fellowship in his university. I stand before them every Sunday and say, we may have started in the valley, but now God has brought us to the mountain. I often sit in the church these days after service, the sound of people chatting in the hallway fading into the evening. And I remember the empty pews, the mockery, the silent nights when the only sound was my groaning before God, the insults, broke pastor, fake calling, you should give up. I remember how my wife cried when each month passed and no child came, how we held hands and said, maybe next month, for 7 long years. I remember how I stood in front of a near-empty church and preached like the world was watching, not because they were, but because God was. I remember the day I was advised by other pastors to seek help from herbalists, to fake miracles, to draw a crowd. Even when I cried, even when I doubted, even when I groaned with no strength to form words. I remembered the nights I cried and shouted. I whispered. I wept. Father, where are you? You called me, didn't you? You told me I would raise giants, didn't you? Why does it feel like you've forgotten me? Even when I did not understand, I didn't know how. I didn't know when. I believed he would come through. And he did. Now, the babies that once existed only in our prayers, cry and giggle in our home. The church that once had 10 members now sees thousands every week, souls hungry for the truth. Our former church auditorium could no longer contain us. The growth was beyond anything we imagined. And then, in a way only God could orchestrate, he made provision for us to move into a much bigger auditorium. How it all happened is still a miracle to us. Those same youths who stayed through the storm, they are firebrands now, teaching, preaching, leading missions. And me? I'm still that young boy who just loves Jesus. Only now, I carry scars, not just sermons. And those scars are my greatest message. To the one watching this, maybe you're a pastor, a wife, a young man or woman wondering, did God forget me? Is this struggle ever going to end? Was it really God who called me? Let me tell you, from the depth of my soul, God did not forget you. He sees every tear, every hunger, every late night. He sees when you want to give up. He sees when people laugh at you, and when the support fades. He sees, and he remembers. The God who raised dry bones into an army in Ezekiel 37. The God who gave Sarah a child at 90. The God who lifted Joseph from prison to the palace. He has not changed. If you're in your dry season, this is not your end. It's your preparation. If you are sowing in tears, you will reap in joy. Don't compromise. Don't bow to pressure. Don't take shortcuts. Let God be the one who builds your ministry, your marriage, your life. He doesn't rush like men, but he is never late. I am Pastor Kenny. This is my grace story. This is my testimony. And if he did it for me, he will do it for you too. I leave you with this word in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 24. Message translation. The one who called you is completely dependable. If he said it, he'll do it. God bless you.
Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs it. And if you're not subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join us. God bless you.